So what did you do when you finished with high school? You went on to college?
I went to OU, went to Ohio University, and went there to study actually music and journalism. But I had some setbacks my junior year. That's when I learned I was adopted. I learned I was adopted when I was 19, and it just rocked my world. It just lightweight, I fell apart.
Really?
Emotionally, it was something that was so traumatic that I just couldn't get back on track. I was a good student, had a 3-point something in college. I was doing well on that track. But once that happened, it just, emotionally just took me out.
So what was it about it that you think that took you there?
I think it was, at that time, just trying to find my place, like thinking you are who you are and then learning that you're not, or, certain relatives that you're no longer, pretty much you just had to reinvent yourself because who you thought you were, you weren't. Or who you thought was someone to you, now is someone that's telling you somebody's different. And I was the only one that didn't know. It was people in the neighborhood that knew that. It was my friends that knew that, and I didn't know. I'm talking about my neighbors lived on Hull and Churchill and Lee and Ashbury. Some of the people I grew up with, they were just told, don't tell him, don't say nothing. So that in itself was something to process. A lot of it I process it still to this day.
Really?
Yeah, man.
That will get me for a loop too, especially you saying, well, when the community knows, and you didn't know, but did you ever have a sense of something was wrong?
You know what? I wouldn't say it was something that's wrong, but because my parents were older, I just thought it's just older parents, but they were actually my grandparents.
So you grew up with your grandparents?
I grew up with my grandparents, but I thought they were my parents.
So they legally adopted
they legally adopted me.
Wow.
Yeah, but I just didn't know that until I was 19. And then who I thought was one of my sisters, they were actually my mother.
That's the part.
Yeah.
That part.
Yeah,
okay.
Like I say, that set me back.
That part. Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Hey, what have you done lately about mentoring? Have you mentored anyone lately? When I sit back and I think about the people who mentored me over my life, I was fortunate. A lot of my friends had fathers and I didn't. I grew up without a father, and that's no secret. I tell people that all the time. I had no father. I grew up with my grandmother. But I learned to appreciate the relationships that some of my friends had with their fathers, and their fathers at that time would even reach out and look out for me. So I have many mentors over my life to help me become who I am today. So today we're going to talk to Bob Ivory about mentorship and what we can do more as an individual to help our brothers as we continue our conversation on Brother Can We Talk. Bob Ivory, this Sunday, 3 o'clock. Check us out.
This is Strategic Moves with Kenn Dowell.
Bob, thank you for coming to the show.
Thanks for having me, Ken. I'm a long way, brother.
Oh, a long way. Everybody's doing something different.
That's right.
It's like I'm sort of stepping in your lane a little bit behind the microphone and doing that stuff. This is what you do, man.
All I gotta do, bring a keyboard out and you sing a couple notes, and you'll have it full circle.
So everybody, if you don't know Bob Ivory is the founder and owner of an organization that's working in our schools right now. It's Students of Promise, and Bob is in several schools around the Cuyahoga County, and he's going to talk a little bit about his program. We're going to talk a little bit about Bob and where he came from, and then we're going to spend some time really getting into the subject, Bob, about African-American males, because to me, right now, there's nothing that's more pressing than what's going on in our communities, and the people that need to step up the most are the ones that need the most help. And sometimes we're overlooked because of the persona that we put out, that we are supposed to be tough. And if you're tough, you're too tough. Trying to find a balance for the African-American male is really hard these days. And so I'm going to talk to you today, Bob, about this mentorship. So before we get there, Bob, let's tell everybody, who is Bob Ivory and where did you come from, man? You grew up in what part of this city? Or are you from this city? Are you from Cleveland? Where are you from, man?
Cleveland, but first, man, I appreciate the opportunity. I'm humbled to be here, and I couldn't think of another host I want to sit in front of other than somebody that I feel you like one of those be a fisher of men. You fished me a long time ago out the set back in early 2000s.
Wow.
So here I am. I'm just humbled and appreciate being here. But yeah, I grew up in Glenville. I'm from the Glenville area off 105, Churchill. Let me just put it out there.
Man, I really been trying to spread this thing out, but it seems like everybody who comes to my show, somebody or another, is related or got some connection to the Glenville community.
Area,
so we're going to work our way across town.
Okay.
Trust me.
That's
we getting there sometime. We get there. And I done had a few of them. Right. Yeah, but it's Glenville is really dominating everything right now. now.
Yeah.
So you went to Churchill. You grew up over on
I grew
Churchill.
up in Churchill. Matter of fact, my house was right across the street. It was a two-family house right across the street from Harry Davis. So
Wow.
literally, my front door was Harry Davis Junior High School.
Oh, so you went to Davis.
I went to Davis. I went to Doane.
Okay.
Sixth grade, I went to Parkwood because they had a program. It was called Major Works or something like that. So you could have stayed at Doane.
Okay.
And my grandparents was like, no, you're going to Parkwood. So you could imagine
Excellent.
after being in, you growing up since preschool, and then all of a sudden you get to the sixth grade, you got to go to another school. So that was very traumatic. So I went to Parkwood, had a good experience there, but went to Harry Davis, and I was in the first busing class. I went to West Tech.
Yeah, so I was a victim of busing too. I had Merle Johnson on the show, and we talked a little bit about it. And I told her, it worked for some people, and then it was some people it didn't work for. And unfortunately, I was one of those people. It just didn't work for me, man.
I think it worked for me, man. I'm gonna tell you why. Because I was well traveled anyway, meaning I would go to the South every summer with my grandparents, and on the bus to California.
Right.
So I got to see outside of my neighborhood, but I had never seen the west side of Cleveland. So other than the west side market, I remember there was a Sears on the west side. My grandfather used to take us over there to get school clothes sometimes. But what I really want to say is that multicultural experience that I got from a West Tech, it worked for me because it prepared me for what I'm doing now and what I've done over the years. And to keep it real, there's some people that I've met that I would have never met. And to this day, I'm talking about our 40th is next year.
Wow.
That I'm down with black, white, Hispanic, that I would have never, I think, interacted with. And we've been friends for 40 years. So
really?
That worked out for me because of the relationships I was able to establish, and I've been able to maintain for 40 years now.
Oh, okay. So what did you do when you get finished with high school? You went on to college?
I went to OU, went to Ohio University, and went there to study actually music and journalism. But I had some setbacks my junior year. That's when I learned I was adopted. I learned I was adopted when I was 19, and it just rocked my world. It just lightweight, I fell apart.
Really?
Emotionally, it was something that was so traumatic that I just couldn't get back on track. I was a good student, had a 3-point something in college. I was doing well on that track. But once that happened, it just, emotionally just took me out.
So what was it about it that you think that took you there?
I think it was, at that time, just trying to find my place, like thinking you are who you are and then learning that you're not, or, certain relatives that you no longer, pretty much you just had to reinvent yourself because who you thought you were, you weren't. Or who you thought was someone to you, now is someone that's telling you somebody's different. And I was the only one that didn't know. It was people in the neighborhood that knew that. It was my friends that knew that, and I didn't know. I'm talking about my neighbors lived on Hull and Churchill and Lee and Ashbury. Some of the people I grew up with, they were just told, don't tell him, don't say nothing. So that in itself was something to process. A lot of it I process it still to this day.
Really?
Yeah, man.
That will get me for a loop too, especially you saying, well, when the community knows, and you didn't know, but did you ever have a sense of something was wrong?
You know what? I wouldn't say it was something that's wrong, but because my parents were older, I just thought it's just older parents, but they were actually my grandparents.
So you grew up with your grandparents?
I grew up with my grandparents, but I thought they were my parents.
So they legally adopted
they legally
you?
adopted me.
Wow.
Yeah, but I just didn't know that until I was 19. And then who I thought was one of my sisters, they were actually my mother.
That's the part. Yeah. That part. Okay.
Like I say, that set me back.
That part. Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. So how's your relationship with your mom now?
Everything's great.
No, everything's good.
I love her to death. She's about to be 75. So yeah, the whole family has, I think, gone through different hurdles since then until now. But I would say that we've definitely made the best out of that situation.
Well, that's good, Bob. I'm glad to know that worked out for you, man. I'm glad that worked out.
And it's helped me, believe it or not, it's helped me in my profession because I've come across students that have similar backgrounds.
Right.
I've come across kids that are struggling with being adopted or family issues. No family is perfect. But to have that in my background, that allows me to identify, be more sensitive and understanding person is having certain struggles.
So let me ask you, because I find this a little interesting. How was your relationship with your grandparents after that?
I was bitter.
You was upset with them too?
Yeah, I don't think I was upset. I was hurt. I was hurt that no one shared this with me. And everybody had their reasons why they did and why they didn't. But even as and they're no longer with us anymore, but that relationship, it ended up to rekindle as well. Before they passed, we had a lot of conversations, and I understand why they did what they did. as I got older, I got more to appreciate them, not more as my parents. I got to appreciate them more as they did the best they knew to do under the situation. That's how I look at it.
You know, I'll share with you a situation in my case. You know, I grew up with my grandmother and my parents. I kind of never knew what happened. We knew that my mother had passed and she died, but nobody never really said how, what happened, or any of that stuff just growing up. So I grew up with my grandmother, and you may have heard people call me David. You know, in the neighborhood I grew up, I was David. Her last name was Wilkins. So her and my grandfather's name was David, so they named me Kenn of David Wilkins, David after my grandfather. Kenn of David Dowell is my name. But when I grew up, Bob, going through school and everything, my name was Kenneth Wilkins. Going through school, and people in the neighborhood be like, oh, that's Kenneth Wilkins. And people went to school, that's Kenneth Wilkins. I'll never forget this, man. Back then, we used to get Social Security from my father, or estranged father, and that's a whole nother story. We'll say that for another day. Right? Father's story is always crazy. You got one of those too. But we ended up cashing Social Security checks. And I'll tell you, man, we used to take our checks up here to the store on 105 in St. Clair. My grandmother used to go there every month, go in there, stand in line with everybody else in the neighborhood. I mean, they knew everybody by name. It was their thing. That was their racket, and they were doing it. And she used to have me go in there with her because naturally, hey, you got to come in here with me. I'm cashing these checks. And, you know, you got to walk out here with me with our money. So fine. No big deal. I was doing that month after month, month after month. So one day I went in there and she said, you got to sign this check. I said, sign what check? She said, you just turned 18. You have to start signing these checks because these checks are yours. Okay. And I said, mine? All these years I'm starving, walking around this house. They ain't got no clothes and this and that. What you mean? I've been getting a check all this time? In my mind. Right. You're like, what you mean check? So I'm looking at it. She said, I'm looking at the check. The check said Kenneth Dowell on it. I was like, this is not me. What check is this? So now I'm like, what are you talking about? And she said, you know, you've been getting a check since you guys been living with me, but I've been using it to pay for that house and all the stuff we've been getting all these years. And now you're 18 years old. This is not my money. This is your money. Okay. But I need it. Yeah. And she said, but I need you to sign it and I'll give you some of it. Right. Okay. I'm still, it's only fair. I'm 18 years old. I really don't care. I'm like, oh, I got some money, right? So I think she gave me $50 or some bull crap. Anyway, I take the money. Okay. Go home. So the questions start asking, like, so what's the deal? And she said, well, I need to tell you something else. She said, your name isn't David Wilkins, and it's not Kenneth Wilkins. Your name is Kenneth Dowell. I'm like, what you mean it's Kenneth Dowell? Right. She said, well, here's your Social Security card. And she handed me my, because I'm 18 now. She's like, you got to have all of this stuff. Right. She said, here's your Social Security card. And I'm looking at it, and it said Kenneth Dowell. And I'm like, Kenneth Dowell? And she said, here's your birth certificate. Because before then, but you know, we ain't looking at none of that stuff, right? So I'm looking at it, like my birth certificate, and it got Kenneth Dowell on it. And I'm like, you know, and I'm like looking at her. She was like, yeah, this is your birth certificate. She said, I'm going to tell you what happened to your mom. You said your mom and dad was married, and your dad killed her. I said, really? He said, he shot her. I said, really? He said he was in love with her, and he got all estranged. He was an older guy. She was a younger woman. They got into this big old fight one day, and he killed her. And your grandfather and everybody was so pissed off and everything. We took you guys in. And from that, I didn't want to say his name anymore. So I called you David Wilkins, her husband's name. Right. So she had enrolled me in school that way, everything. Just doing that because she was like, she hated this dude that bad. And as a result of that, as I got older, I had to change my name. That's why some people kind of be like, Kenneth Dowell, what the hell is Kenneth Dowell? The people I went to school, you can't find me in school. Like, you can't, who's this dude? Because I went through school under a whole nother different name, man. It wasn't even a legal name. I shouldn't even be saying it, but really it wasn't. Right. Because that's not who I am. Right. But as you say, to your grandparents' point, the reason why I brought that up, because I asked you about how you feel about your grandparents about that is because I understand they probably was in a tough position too. For whatever the circumstance of why they felt that had to happen, they did what they did, and had to carry that burden of not telling you all that time was probably just as bad for them as well.
Exactly. And when I look back at it, regardless of what my emotions are or have been, I can't even relate to what theirs had to be. I'm saying, you got to understand, I was born in 65. So we're talking about in the late 60s, early 70s. I'm
67, so the same thing.
Like, those kind of dynamics, you know, they thought differently.
Right.
And then a lot of that was a carryover from generations even before that.
Correct.
Things that went down in the South, and she's your cousin now. You know, it's just the way it was. But through that, some growth has happened. So to me, it happened for a reason, because now I'm able to pour those experiences into the lives of other people, meaning younger people.
So let's move along the road a little bit. You did some time working with Miss Lewis for a little bit, and you was over there, and that's around the time we met. What was you doing for Miss Lewis back then? I can't remember.
That was, early 2000s, and I got to tell you how I met Miss Lewis.
Okay.
Everybody knew who Fannie Lewis was.
Correct.
And I just knew her from That's That Lady on television. But I met her through, his name is Mike Nelson, good friend of mine. Mike Nelson.
African Mike.
Yeah,
right.
yeah. Mike Africa. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
He was Mike Nelson then.
He's Mike Africa.
So I met him because he was related to my oldest daughter's mom. They were cousins.
Yeah, I remember.
And so on him, and we got to talking, and he was like, "Man, I got somebody I want you to meet." And he had me meet right there on what was that, on Superior, 65th, where they had that building that she finally renovated and turned into the stores and all that. By then, it was just a shell.
Right.
It was dirt. I'm like, where the hell? Where am I at? What is this?
Right.
You know. But then I saw Fannie Lewis in the middle of it, so they were talking about what this was going to be. Mike Nelson was there, and Mike Africa was there. Introduced Miss Lewis, and then we just started talking. And then I started sharing my perspective about things. I started talking about how I viewed certain things. Before you know it, she just zeroed in on me, and we just started having a conversation. I think we stood out there for like 2 hours.
Wow.
And before the conversation ended, she said, "What do you do?" At the time, I ran some group homes. I used to be a correction officer. Me and one of my partners left Cuyahoga Hills and opened up, a group home. And I said, "Yeah, I worked with at-risk boys in a group home." It was almost like she wanted to say, "You like doing that?" That's what it felt like she wanted to say.
Right.
It reminds me, what was that scene in Ray when he met the West End and Auntie, and he was telling him he worked the trains. He said, "You like that job?"
Right.
That's what it felt like. And then I told Miss, I said, "Yeah, I love working with young people." She gave me her card. She said, "Call me tomorrow. I need you over here in Huff." I'm like, Huff? You got to say somebody that grew up on 105 in Superior.
Right.
What Huff got for me?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Huff has always been tough.
Yeah, I couldn't even go that far down the street.
Exactly.
I couldn't go past the Salvation Army.
Right.
If I went past 93rd,
right,
it was a problem.
Exactly.
The other way, going up Superior, if I went past maybe a shrimp boat, it was a problem.
Correct.
So I had to stay in a certain perimeter. So I knew nothing really about Huff. I couldn't even go down to Thurgood Marshall and play basketball.
Right.
Unless I snuck. But when she said, "I want to eat you over in the Huff," I didn't understand what she meant. But we met the next day, and she started explaining to me what she was trying to do in the neighborhood, and the rest was history. I mean, she went from just Councilwoman Lewis to me. She was like a mother to me. And she's the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing today, because the door she opened and the seeds that she planted me in and the persons that she ended up connecting me to, like yourself, have been lifelong relationships ever since. So Councilwoman Lewis gets the credit for everything that I'm doing right now. Programmatically, things I've done, in politics, things I've done in government, things I've done in faith-based community and within the community period. That all started from that.
So just to let you guys know how strong and powerful Ms. Lewis was,
yes.
Bob decided that he was going to run against her.
Oh, you man, cut.
Bob said, "I'm going to run against Ms. Lewis."
Man, don't a lot of people know that?
No, a lot of people don't know it. But it was back in our radical days. On one of our podcasts we had earlier, we was talking with Blaine, and we talked about how our organization, our group, we took on the big dogs back in the days. It was like, we look at what's going on and we say, "Hey, man, we had the audacity
I remember
to
the
really
day
go
you
against."
said it. I think I told you first because I was pissed. I was angry.
He was angry,
So
right?
we fell out,
Right.
You know what I call it? Malcolm X and Elijah Muhammad. They had a split. Well, Bob Ivory and the late, great Councilwoman Fannie Lewis, we had a split. But instead of me just going on my little merry way,
well,
like, no, man,
I'm running.
I like it over here.
You like it, but we were all pumped because the organization was all about, hey, we need to change empowerment and that.
Y'all gassed me all
we
up.
gassed you up, but we ain't gassed you up because when you got ready to go, we said, "Wait a minute, Bob."
Yeah, I remember you saying, "Bob, you sure you gonna do that?"
I was like, "Bob, you gonna do that?" But I was like, "Oh man, I want to." But I wanted to say it because I want you to share. I want you to share with the people the visit you had when you decided to do it, and then you decided that you said, "You know what? I think I'm gonna change my mind."
Let me see how I can do that.
You don't have to use no names.
I ain't gonna use no names. But She had actually allowed me to start a program. I started an education program, my first one in Lexington Village. It was called the Lexington Village Educational Learning Center. So I had started doing after-school programming, working with the kids from East High and Mary B. Martin, social emotional learning. So the stuff I'm doing now, I was actually, the groundwork with that was placed, the opportunity she created for me in Lexington Village in Huff. But there was one day in the office, it was in the summertime, and a couple of gentlemen came in and who I knew very well. They sat down and I'm thinking, hey, what's happening? They just wasn't smiling. And I said, okay. And then they just put it flat out, you know, I heard you drew petitions. You pulled petitions, this, that, and the other. I say, well, yeah. Matter of fact, I got all the signatures I needed in 2 days. I got 3 times as many signatures as I needed in a weekend. So all that said to me was somebody in that neighborhood was feeling me. Either that or they was setting me up to get knocked off.
Get knocked off.
So that conversation that I had with a few constituents, I'll just call them constituents, came to visit me. And let's just say that was the end of my political career.
You didn't run no more.
I pulled a petition 6.
And I tell you, because there's something to that. Yeah. Because when you said it was that many people, maybe was thinking different. There's a little truth to that. There's a little truth that it was that, but also she had such a ground game in the community that people would sign it just to hang up the phone and call her. Like, he just left my house. I signed the petition, Ms. Lewis, but yeah, Bob is running against you.
That's right.
They was calling. They was getting it up. What he had on. Was Streety all right? They was all on you, brother. So trust me on that. So we're gonna keep it moving, man. We go from that. Yeah, that was funny. It was that's reality, though. That's total reality.
That's real and that's raw.
And it's part of your story.
It is.
So I want to go ahead and move on to Ted Strickland.
Yes.
And you guys have started closing the achievement gap, which actually is what you kind of roll in the student of promise in. So let's talk a little bit about the work you did with the achievement gap with Senator Prentice on the state level.
There's so many people, as you could probably relate to yourself, there's so many people that touched us and so many shoulders that we stood on that we wouldn't be where we are today without them. And Senator C.J. Prentice is another. There is no way I would be remotely where I am now and the opportunities I've had without Senator C.J. Prentice. I knew of her, like I said, and I knew she was an elected official and she was a state senator. I did not have maybe this information as far as, you know, what she meant to education, like some of the laws that were in place because of her and just her gravitas on education, period. I really didn't know that. I was really working with Ann Hill at the time.
Correct.
I was in the governor's office. I was the community outreach coordinator or something for this region. So I met C.J. Prentice after an event, and then next thing I know, she called me and then set up an appointment to come in. She talked. I was like, just everybody wanted to come in. It was a constituent office, so I'm talking to her on behalf of something I'm gonna share with the governor or Ann or whatever. And she told me, we just got this $20 million and we about to roll out this statewide achievement gap effort. And I had to ask her. I'm gonna be honest. I was like, what's the achievement gap? I mean, I did not know formally what she was really talking about. And she put all these papers on the desk and a long conference room table in the governor's office. Put all these papers on the table and started showing me data and this, that, and the other. And then she said, I need somebody, though, from this area to run Cleveland, meaning Cleveland and East Cleveland. I need somebody that knows the community. I need somebody that has experience working with kids. And she said, well, how would you think about coming to Columbus and working with the initiative? And I wasn't even astute enough to be honored. All I could think about was moving from Cleveland to the Columbus.
Right.
And at the time, my grandmother was aging, and by that time, my grandfather had passed. So I'm thinking I want to stay as close to her as possible. But then I'm thinking about an opportunity to go to Columbus and work in the governor's office on an initiative. $20 million, how much of that $20 million, is set aside for somebody like me?
Right.
But long story short, I joined her team, and it was the best decision I ever made in my life.
So what was y'all guys doing?
What we did was the state was divided into different regions. Like I did the Cleveland area. Then another one of my colleagues, we were called regional project man. Another colleague had like Dayton, Cincinnati. Somebody had Columbus in the southwest area. Somebody else had Lorain and Sandusky. So the state was divided into these different regions where we would go into the high schools in those regions, working with, at the time, African-American males, trying to close the achievement gap, academically, socially, emotionally, exposure opportunities, field trips, connecting them to persons like yourself in the community. So it was divided around the state. However, East Cleveland and Cleveland made up 50% the whole state, population-wise. So there were 2,500 students in Cleveland and East Cleveland combined. There were 5,000 in the rest of the state combined.
Really?
So I actually had the largest.
And you was only concentrating on African American males?
At the time, it was African American males. Yeah.
Wow.
African American males, Latino males, but mainly because of Cleveland and East Cleveland was mostly African American males.
So how long y'all did that program?
That went, the 3 years that the funding was lasting, 3 years that the governor was there, then the funding went away. And then at the time, it was left up to the districts if they kept it going. And I remember I was in CJ's office and I had an opportunity. She said to me, Bob, well, would you want to go back to Cleveland and maybe work with the school district? I had never really worked in the school districts before. And I had a great conversation with Dr. Sanders. Next thing you know, I was at Kennedy doing the same program.
Gotcha.
For about $40,000 a year less.
Welcome back to Cleveland.
Welcome back to Cleveland. You know, but it also was the best decision because I'm sure I probably could have got another state job in Columbus or in another department, maybe even not as lost that much of a salary. But I can't do what I don't have a passion for. That's been since I was a kid. If I'm not feeling it, I can't do it. I could not just laterally go to another department or another agency. So I went to Kennedy and still worked with the program. It was still CTAC at the time. And then Dr. Sanders basically gave me an opportunity to just, okay, Bob, you know, continue what you're doing. And, you know, I think I took Kennedy to another level at that time. And ever since then, it has kind of morphed or transitioned into what now is Students of Promise. Because what I say to people is I kind of have the original copy.
Okay.
You know? And I respect everyone else's effort out there. But I feel like what I bring to the table is the original copy. You know what I'm saying? So there are some other, you know,
they sampling from you, Bob.
Man, they sampling. They sampling.
We need to salute the sample.
Man, I need to get some royalties.
We need to salute the sample. Need some royalties off of that.
Yeah.
They all taking pieces of your hits,
because
man.
I think the original model we put together was it. I'm telling you, it was it. And the reason why I know it is because I went to San Francisco and I implemented it out there.
Wow.
They saw it right away. Like,
wow.
Oh, you do this, and this is what the outcomes are.
So why don't you take this moment to explain to the people exactly, for those who don't know, what Student of Promise does, the schools that you are located in, and some of the achievements that you guys have done during that program. My daughter, she in and out your program, and when I could get her to go, and it's not because of your program, it's all her, but she is a part of that. Talk about what is Students of Promise.
In short terms, it is a Closing the Achievement Gap initiative. And what that means in Closing the Achievement Gap is basically trying to bridge the academic gap between African Americans and their counterparts. If you look at data from test scores, you look at data from attendance, you look at data from dropout rates, unfortunately, especially in the urban centers, you're going to find that African American and students of colors, they lag way behind their counterparts than the white kids. And so this effort is how do we narrow. I have a philosophy that we can eliminate it. You know, I think it should be eliminate the achievement gap. But we do that various ways. You know, the number one that the approach is, and this is where Senator Prentice will always, to me, is a legend with creating this model that says if you have this significant adult in the lives of that kid inside the school that are all focused on them academically, socially, emotionally, providing them opportunities, providing them advocacy, providing them opportunities to go outside what CJ named as the 6-block radius of awareness. I talked about that earlier. I didn't have a 6-block radius of awareness because I had been to Arkansas, I've been to Chicago, I've been to LA, I've been to, you know, I've been all over, been to New York, but we got some kids that ain't never been
no more than
downtown.
Right.
We ain't got kids that ain't never seen Lake Erie, and I'm not exaggerating.
No, that's true.
We got some kids that in middle school that live in
on the
east
south
side or the south or east side,
and
they never seen
came
the
over
lake.
There. Yeah. And vice versa, you got kids on St. Clair who never been to Harvard,
They never been
to
to
Miles,
Exactly.
wouldn't even know how to get there.
But then I thought, like, that's not a Cleveland thing. Because when I went to San Francisco, there were kids in San Francisco that lived in Bayview's Hunters Point. Bayview Hunters Point, I called it, this is not anything, no disparity remark, but to me, it was like East Cleveland with palm trees. That's what Bayview Hunters Point was.
Their version.
When I was their version.
San Francisco's version of East Cleveland.
Yeah, but those kids had never seen the Golden Gate Bridge.
Wow.
Golden Gate Bridge is one of the 8th wonders of the world. And I was in the classroom and they had never seen it. I'm like, wait a minute, you live in San Francisco.
Right.
But you gotta understand, if we didn't have a reason to go down here, why would they go? So basically what I'm really saying is that linkage coordinator is the role I'm describing. It was their role to introduce, link, navigate, help them matriculate through school, and be pretty much for them everything that kid needs. So that linkage coordinator is everything from an extended family member to a PO, to a counselor, to a mentor, a role model. So in CJ's brilliance, she created this position that person, if you embed them in the school, they could be any and everything they need to that kid. And so that is really the genesis of the program, is that linkage coordinator. Everything else is just kind of a offshoot or ancillary support of that. Community folks like yourself, and introducing them to, I don't know how many times we tried to get kids to work, everything from campaign literature to when they get older, to be able to work the polls, to be able to meet a Councilman Lewis, to be able to meet a HUD director, Marsha Fudge. My students have met those people.
Right.
My students have sat down and had breakfast with Senator Sherrod Brown. My students have sat and went from a councilwoman to now a member of Congress, Chantel Brown. Students of promise, not just from Warrensville, from all over the program, have been able to engage her, and she's engaged them. And to see somebody that looks like them now in the United States Congress, right there from Warrensville.
So what schools are you in?
Right now I'm in the Warrensville City School District, Bedford City School District, and Cleveland Heights University Heights City School District.
I know you do the college trips.
Yeah, college trips is definitely big. HBCU tours, we've gone everywhere from Alabama State to Morehouse to Spelman to Tuskegee University, Lincoln University. We've even gone to some PDIs. We've gone to DePaul University, gone to Ohio State. We've gone to where my younger brother is an administrator at Lehigh University. So all that exposure to kids that never even dreamed of going to college, or maybe there's nobody in their families going to college. So what we say is, this is not just a field trip. This is somewhere that you can be in a few years. And we're going to show you, navigate you, help you stay on task if that's your choice.
But if it's not your choice?
I'm glad you said that, because I was just about to say that. Maybe that's not the path that they see themselves on. So then we have to create career pathways. So we introduce them to the labor fields, trades organizations. We introduce them to technology. We've had Career Fest where entrepreneurs come. I've had everybody from Lonnie Coleman to folks like Renee Fowler, introducing them to entrepreneurs that can show them another pathway to success. So what we want to do, and what we have attempted to do over the last at least 15 years as a model, and the last 9 years as Students of Promise, is help kids reach their full potential. And that also helps kids to not fall down that other pathway. I've taken kids to college tours that had ankle braces on, And here's a true story. This was maybe the first couple years of the program. I remember getting a call from a parent. I'm not going to name the district, but I got a call from a parent from this particular district, and she was crying. We were on our way back from the University of Toledo. I think we went to Bowling Green that day and the University of Toledo. We were on our way back. It might have been like about maybe 7 o'clock. We on the road. She calls crying, like, Mr. Ivory, I just got a call from my son's PO. Like, okay. He was like, if he's not here by 8 o'clock, he was going to have him violate his probation. I was like, no, man, that can't be, because we're on a college tour. We're on a field trip, and everybody on the bus is late.
Right.
We're not going to get back by 8 o'clock.
He's
by the
in
time
school.
she called, we might have been an hour and 45 minutes away. Technically, he's in school.
Yeah.
But when she called him back, no, he's saying if he is not back at 8 o'clock, that police district, that police officer from that city is going to be there waiting to take him to the detention center. I say, that's not going to happen. And it's not going to happen because I had Judge Mike Ryan's cell number in my phone. So I explained the situation when I called him, and of course he was like, I'll handle it. And then the actual probation officer called me on my phone. I knew the guy, man. We used to work together on 22nd at the detention center. I even said, man,
why was he being
on
a
field
prick,
trip.
though?
We're on a college tour. These are the things that we're trying to expose him to, that hopefully he'll make some different decisions so he can see himself on another pathway. But he was sticking to that. No, he got to be.
Kidding me?
It was bad. And
Straight prick.
And I guarantee you, probably if I did not have the relationship,
no doubt,
that kind of resource,
no doubt.
And this is how everything. And I'm saying this to your viewers: relationships are priceless, because I would not have known a Mike Ryan on that level, even though he went to high school with my brothers. I wouldn't know him on that level if I did not have that introduction or had not been indoctrinated years ago into politics, into community advocacy, into build, into everything that what we've done over the last 30 years. I would not necessarily had 5 or 6 judges in my cell phone to call to help a family, to help her son. You know, so everything is all relative. Everything. I'm not just taking them to meet Senator Brown, Sherrod Brown, or Congresswoman Brown just to say you met. No, because that's a relationship. You need to get to know her, because you're not going to always be 14 or 15. Right. You need to understand what her office does. You need to understand what you as a constituent need to be aware of. So one day when you say, yes, Congresswoman Brown or Secretary Fudge, we came to D.C. when you were the Congresswoman. Remember? It was 2014, and we came to your office, and you took pictures with us. Or we came to that one event that we had with Bashir, with the secretary, and I brought about 40 students there. What I'm really trying to get them to say is, you have to be able to embrace those around you, those shoulders that you stand on. They're not just somebody you see on television or see on some literature in your mailbox. These are people that were once you.
But, you know, and I get that too. But then we got these assholes.
Yeah.
And I'm going to just call that guy that. I don't know who he is or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
But that's all that was.
That's all that was.
I mean, and that's the part that me and Fred talked a little bit about on the podcast, was that it seems like some people are these people that when you're in trouble, they always keep you in trouble.
Right.
All right. Now, this dude, you in a position where you hold the opportunity to control what may happen to this young man's life. Right there in your hands. And instead of you doing the right thing with it, you decide that you're going to make it harder on his mom over the weekend. You're going to make it harder on the gentleman who got a busload of students going across the country
and
to
we all
take them.
late.
And everybody
like he
late.
ran off by himself and you can't find him.
Exactly.
Everybody on the bus is going to be late.
And for you to make it harder for that young man. And it's
one of
the
us
part.
is that. That's the part.
It's always that, man.
Oh,
and that's the part that, you know, in our system that's really screwed up for African American males. Because I imagine that was a brother, right?
It was a brother.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's always one of us, always African American males. And if he hadn't have got that, now just imagine. Let's go the other way. Like you say, I didn't have none of those contacts, and that car was sitting for him when he got off that bus. Everything that you put into his mind that weekend is all thrown out the door.
Right. And what he would have said was, see there? I went on the trip. I went on the college trip. I did this. And look what still happened to me. And then now
doing the right thing.
Doing the right thing.
Right.
So now, if he gets violated, now he has to go do his time. He's not going to do his time at the detention center. Now he's in DYS.
Right.
So he went from a college trip to probably Indian River or somewhere.
Yes.
Doing the right with a Mr. Ivory on the bus.
With a Mr. Ivory on the bus and an asshole. And I'm gonna say, I know guests hate, my people hate me when I cuss, but I'm gonna call him that on the other line, who tried to do that to that young man.
But here it is, Ken, we gotta understand this, that even though he was what you said, he didn't get there on his own. And I'm gonna explain that as shortly and briefly as I know how. His name was Willie Lynch. And what he said was, when he was trying to tell the plantation owners how to get in control of their slaves, he gave them a point. He might as well had a PowerPoint in 1600.
It was a PowerPoint back then.
It was a PowerPoint, a 1600 whiteboard PowerPoint. He said, if you do this, and this against that one, and this against this, if you take all these differences and you exploit them, he put the playbook there. He said, from 300 to 800 years, you will always have control of these people. Guess where we are right now? We're in the middle of that 300 to 800 years.
Wow.
So he was right, because that's exactly what has happened ever since. And we are now in the midst of that time frame that he predicted. If you do these things consistently, follow his script, he said from 300 to 800 years. And we are in that time frame right now. So that brother, it's plenty of brothers like that.
Plenty of them.
That's in that. And I'm talking about plenty of brothers that's sitting behind desks with shirt and ties on.
Yeah.
You know?
Plenty of them.
And that's one thing, back to Miss Lewis. She said, I never forget, I was speaking somewhere and somebody said something about how I was dressed. I must have had on a nice suit and a tie and this, that, and the other. I was talking, and she said, but don't let that shirt and tie fool you. I didn't know what she was suggesting. She said that, but what she was really saying is, everybody with a shirt and tie on, don't let that fool you. You better listen to what they're saying. You better watch what they're doing.
Correct.
Or you better see where their heart is, because there's a bunch of folks with certain ties on that will jam you up.
All the time. So, Bob, you talked about this disparity and you talked about this achievement gap. I want to talk about African-American males specifically. I know that there's articles that's been printed that talked about Cleveland is the most stressful place to live. It's the worst place for women, African-American women, and all these things. So my thing is, if it has to be that bad for African-American women to not work here, if it's the most stressful place for people to be, then the person who they never give anything on is African-American males. I guess we probably ain't even registering. We probably so low on the totem pole on all of that. So what I want to get into is your view of what's going on in our educational system. You've really been doing a lot of mentoring, and you're doing a lot with the 100 Black Men in that organization. What do you first believe that we should be doing more to help African-American males?
I think for starters has to happen is we need to do more of this conversation. We need to do more dialogue that pours in the positive, more to make them realize that they have some genius inside of them. You know, believe it or not, even that dude on the block, he got some genius in him. It's just not been activated, or no one has poured enough of themselves into him so he can realize it. I mean, I've seen that firsthand. I never forget when we was with Governor Strickland. I remember he would always say this line that I believe Senator Prentice gave him a talking point. There would be no more throwaway kids. I've seen kids that, for the lack of a better word, they were thrown away. So if you got a throwaway kid, what kind of adult you think he's going to be? What kind of teenager? If you throw away a kid, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old, what kind of kid you think is going to be 15, 16, 17?
Right.
And then 23, 24, 25.
Correct.
Then 31, 32, 33. So what we have to do is we have to reel them back. You know, we have to reel them back in, and that's done in a multitude of ways. You just named a lot of organizations. I'm fortunate enough to be a part of them. 100 Black Men in Greater Cleveland. The Urban League is doing great work. And I'm working with the Marsha Mockaby with the My Brother's Keepers initiative. Obviously, Students of Promise, closing the achievement gap, C-Tag in Cleveland with my fraternity brother, George Golden, running that. The fraternities, you know, I'm a proud member of Make Us Have 5 Fraternity Incorporated, but all the Divine Nine organizations have the same mission, and that is to uplift those in the community, and especially the least of those. So that's, and all that is number one. Number one is uplift. Number one is pouring into those young people what they're missing, that's taking that glass half full to actually fill it. But what it is, what are we going to fill it with?
Right.
You know, education. Some of it is not just math, science, social studies, and language arts. Some of it is to re-educate them and maybe deprogram them of the miseducation that makes them tune out school. So we talk about the dropout rate, and when kids drop out in 9th grade is the biggest dropout year, and dropping out in 11th grade. No, what you're not understanding is you got some 4th graders that have dropped out. They've already dropped out. They're just not old enough to say, I'm not going to school. That's because we have not properly engaged them. We have not properly poured into them all these different resources that we have as a community.
How you do it, though? How do you get to these young people to get, like 100 Black Men can have the best program in the world, but nobody's signing up for those programs?
The days is waiting for somebody to come sign up for something. And gone are the days, I think, of like my grandparents, where I didn't have to sign up for nothing. I was already in it. You know what I'm saying? My grandfather was like, oh, you're going to do this. It's at the library, at the Superior Library across the street from Dome. And I'm looking like, I don't even remember saying I wanted to go to the library today. No, you're going because they made sure that you took advantage of X, Y opportunity. So those days are gone. So that's why I'm not saying they're gone. They're not what they used to be. Okay. But when you have, say, a program like, say, Students of Promise, or C-Tag in Cleveland, or the 100 Black Men mentoring, or the Urban Leagues, My Brother's Keepers. There's as many organizations like that. You know, Khalil Tamad is doing great work, and the students that he works with. You know, another Ted Ginn is doing awesome work. Another Tim Roberts. There's a lot of us doing work like that. We just have to clone ourselves and pour ourselves in others, so we have more of a village doing the same thing. And you will see a uptick in the positive but it's not enough of us doing that. That's number one. It's to be more of us that takes control of our own village. That's number one. Number two is the miseducation part. We got to aggressively tackle that. We got to tackle and address what they are drawn to on that screen, what they are drawn to on those phones, what they are almost lulled to sleep by through video. None of those things are a bad thing, but like my parents used to say, too much of anything is not good for you. So I don't think we have a culture now where the parents turn the TV, you know what I'm saying, or put that phone away. I will never forget the day, and rest his soul, I'll never forget my favorite radio that I had that he just told me one time too many to turn it off and do your homework. I had it down real low. My room was on the second floor. I told you, across from Harry Davis Junior High School. That radio, like about this big, probably was in the grass in the late radio, grass in the field, because he threw it out the window. Wow. Now, did he have some anger issues? Yes.
You had to throw my radio out the window.
But I never forget
you
the message.
You could have turned it off and just took it.
He could have just unplugged it and put it in his room.
Right, that's what I'm saying, right.
But what it left me with, I'll never forget. Hey, this is important. This is what I want you to get right now.
And don't fuck with that.
But now, dude, and definitely, I'm not going to win that.
You ain't going to never win that one.
But fast forward 35 years later, now it's the cell phone. You know what I'm saying? Now it's TikTok. Now it's video. Now it's the lyrics and the music. Nobody's turning that off. Nobody's turning that down. So you got to match education, and you got to deal with that miseducation piece.
Bob, I really want to thank you again for coming on our program today, man. You did a great job. We're going to have more conversations again. If you guys want to leave a question for Bob, because we're going to be having our panel discussion coming up soon, please leave that in the comments, and we'll make sure we'll get that out to Mr. Ivory. So, Bob, I'm going to let you say your piece. This camera right there belongs to you, brother. Say whatever you like to say.
Well, first, what I want to do is thank you, Kenn Dowell, for this opportunity. I mean, I'm so full of emotion right now because of our travels. And to be invited on your show is one of the greatest honors I've had in a long time. I just want to just say to everybody, anyone that's listening or watching it, that our young people are our future today. So do what you can to pour into, to uplift, to recognize where a kid is in need. And kid doesn't always have to be middle, elementary school, high school kids. There's some college kids. There's some kids that have ideas about being entrepreneurs or starting business. Just uplift. Lift as you climb. As you go up, lift somebody else up. It's not just about the programs that I've had the opportunity to either start or develop. One thing I remember Ms. Lewis saying to me, she said, it's all about helping and serving people. There's those simple things and simple words that somebody imparts to me like she did, I'll remember for the rest of my life. So whenever I get frustrated or whenever I wonder why this is that way, or whenever, you know, my evil twin comes out and wants to call somebody and give them a piece of my mind, I have to step back and when it comes to our young people and say, no, just keep doing what you're doing. It's all about service, and it's all about helping people and uplifting our community. And I think we can do it because we stand on the shoulders of people that have already showed us the way, not just in Cleveland, but just go in our history, just go into our ancestry. We have a blueprint. We have a pathway. I think we just have to realize the greatness we have in us, where it came from, and then do all we can to sustain that. And so I'm going to shift my hat for a minute because I didn't get to say what my other passion is, which is music. I love music. I'm a musician. And if you want to hear some relaxing music, some smooth music, you just check out Bob Ivory Music, my YouTube page, Bob Ivory. I do smooth jazz and R&B. So that is how I balance myself, the hectic government world and the nonprofit world and the school district world and what's going on in the neighborhood world. And sometimes you got to sit back. And for me, it's music. So as I'm trying to share some gifts that God gave me and gifts that has made room for me for what I do in the community and what I do with young people and what I'm trying to do on an organizational level, I'm trying to balance that and also lead this world some good music behind. I appreciate this opportunity. Not about me, it's God who gets all the glory.
Thanks again, Bob. Brother, can we talk? We just did.
Right.
Talk to you next time.